Yeah, you have these mental benefits of caffeine. Oh, you're wired, you go focus, you could do more. Maybe it gets rid of some of that ADHD that you have, or maybe it ramps it up. Caffeine has been a really good solution for you. It feels good and you get stuff done. And those symptoms, those adverse symptoms like increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased irritability, those are good for short periods of time, but if you're always constantly in those, it takes a toll on your body.
I gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my old friends calling, told them nothing's for free. Told me time is money, dog, swear I paid all my fees. I was starving for this game, now my family can eat.
Hey everyone, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cup of Nurses show with your hosts Peter and Matt here. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you are a new listener, welcome to the show. No science topic gets not talked about here. Everything gets uncovered. We don't hide anything. We don't shy away from anything. We say it how it is. That's why this show is so freaking great, and I love tuning in myself. I love coming on here every single day, and if we help you in any way, give you value, please give us a like, comment, give us a 5 stars, share it with your loved ones. This is how we grow. This is how we get motivated, and this is why we keep on showing up here and producing this high-quality content. We're on a 5-day streak this week. We're putting in the work. About to start work. But anyways, cupofnurses.com has everything you need. And it has a new layout which looks sick. It almost looks like a Google search engine. Whatever you want to find there as far as topics, check that out. We are Frontline Warriors. If you want to increase your consciousness because there is a war on your mind, tune in there. Awesome blog posts about consciousness. YouTube as well. There's always debriefings there, and we have a ton of episodes. And the last thing, Pronto. It is the app that we're currently working on that's going to revolutionize and innovate healthcare. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for the stellar introduction. Another great day in San Diego here. But in this episode, we're going to talk about caffeine. It is Caffeine Awareness Month. And a lot of people consume caffeine, but they still aren't really sure on its actual effects on the human body. And what a cool stat that we've learned is that 85% of people in the United States drink at least one caffeine beverage a day.
It's true that America runs on Dunkin'. A little bit of Starbucks as well.
Yeah. But now that you brought it up, are you a Starbucks guy or a Dunkin' kind of guy?
I've had phases. So when I was in nursing school, I was getting Dunkin' all the time because I was getting caffeinated twice a day. You know how it goes. And then as far as now, lately, just travel nursing, we've been getting a lot more Starbucks, or we had the local place where we lived. And then also gas station coffee, technically, just to think about it. But we also make coffee ourselves here, so getting them grinded up is just as good. How about yourself?
Yeah, same. So same, very similar journey. I definitely grew up probably more Dunkin' person. And then in college, I probably slowly transitioned to Starbucks because they got me on the environment. And Dunkin', you just kind of go in there and getting your stuff, and you're going like, America runs on Dunkin', so you hop in, hop out, you got your coffee, you got your donut, whatever. But Starbucks kind of slowed that environment down. It gave you like a place to go, a place to sit down, and actually took advantage of the longer waiting lines, you could say, because I feel like they almost revolutionized it, because at Starbucks, like, you're okay in waiting at Starbucks, you could say. Like, I'm more down to wait in line 10 minutes in Starbucks to get my drink than I am getting groceries. Because at Starbucks, you can at least sit down, go on your phone, or you can work on some stuff.
That's why they push that price point.
Yeah, and you get the whole experience. So definitely through school, high school, and probably more in college, I transitioned from Dunkin' to Starbucks. And then they had that rewards program that came out. That was like the first rewards program you could say that I actually used. I know my parents were like JCPenney reward members and like Kohl's and stuff like that, but I never belonged to any of those kind of department stores. But
you only went with your mom to shop.
I guess you could say that, because she was giving the deals.
She was collecting the coupons.
Yeah. So exactly.
I know how it goes. Don't worry, man.
Respect, you know?
I remember how back in the day I used to always get Old Navy. Then I thought it was like cool, and I'm trying to get better swag out here. So there's like phases of better clothing. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to go to Old Navy anymore, and I stayed back home. So It's such a fun time transitioning from like a kid to a teenager.
Right?
Side note.
It's so funny because like you grow up shopping with your mom, and then first it's like your mom shopping for you. Then it's like she takes you with because sometimes shit doesn't fit properly, so she'd rather have you there as a kid. Hey, go in here, 4 pairs of pants, 4 t-shirts, try this on, tell me what fits, we'll get the similar ones. And like, okay, I do that as a kid. And then it's like, then there's that point where shopping sucked with your mom, but you had to do it. And then after that point, I think became shopping with your parents or your mom or whoever you shop with as like a normal thing. And then what changed it up is you shopping by yourself, because then your parents give you money, like $100 or $120 or whatever they gave, and then you just go to like Hollister or Aeropostale, Abercrombie & Fitch, all those ones, and just buy something.
I agree with you. My little brother's in that phase now too, where he's resisting of the clothing that's being purchased for him. So it's funny seeing those footsteps.
Yeah.
But back to caffeine. We use it quite a bit. Speaking of which, I'm holding a coffee mug here, and I'm drinking caffeine. Mm-hmm. It's our podcast logo has a coffee cup there, cup of nurses. So
our That Loud had a caffeine molecule, I believe, or something.
Yeah,
like
we've been caffeinated for a lot of our lives, and that's interesting to think about, because you said it's the only legal psychoactive drug.
I haven't said that this episode, but I've said it in the past. Yes.
Okay.
But it's also in the show
and technically it's in the notes, so you just claim you said it there. And that's a scary thing to think about, because we legalize other medicines and drugs, but what is this drug doing to us? What is caffeine as a stimulant doing to the nervous system?
Because if you think about it, like think about it this way. So so I'm gonna give you some perspective because I'm a night shift nurse, and you can maybe give the same perspective. But I was a huge energy drinker back when I first started becoming a nurse, started doing night shift and things like that. So like it's interesting to look at, and I thought about this, is that there's you could say a legal amount of caffeine you could put in one beverage, but there's no amount limit for how much of the beverages you can drink or buy. So there really is no max amount of caffeine that you could buy. It's a stimulant, and it's the only, like Matt said, and I said previously to this day, is that caffeine is the only legal stimulant that's also most psychoactive thing that we have on the market, that there's no limit on. They limit you how much you can put in a can based on the amount of liquid in the bottle or the can, but they don't say, hey, you can only buy 5 Red Bulls. And what I was trying to tell you a minute ago with the whole story with night shift is that I used to drink sometimes like 4 Red Bulls in a given shift, and like it was crazy because I would come in. Actually, it was like 3 Red Bulls and a coffee. I would come in with a coffee, which is like 155 milligrams of caffeine, and then I would slam 3 Red Bulls throughout my shift. One I would sip on. It's
a lot.
Second one I would chug, and a third one I would probably sip on too. But the standard was probably like 1 coffee and one energy drink. That was like standard. But sometimes when it was a busy day and you're working, like you picked up an overtime shift, you're working like your 5th in a row or whatever, then that 5th day I'm definitely gonna need like 3 energy drinks and a coffee. So it's like, think about it, it's like 600 milligrams of caffeine right there, if not more.
Before the show, I always like to go on YouTube and maybe watch a quick little summary of some fun facts I could pull from the episode to better educate people on this show. And I found out how much caffeine it takes to kill you. So the max formula that you can take is 70 milligrams per kilogram. So if a coffee cup is like 150 milligrams of caffeine and you're like a 70 kilo person, then technically you need to consume 70 cups of coffee in one sitting for it actually to have a lethal dose of caffeine to kill you.
Damn. You said 30?
70 milligrams per kilogram.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. That's not going to happen.
So
just like you can't outsmoke yourself.
I have to ingest over 5,000 milligrams of caffeine. That's a lot. I can
divide that by 150. Not to
33. So 34.
34
It's 33.9 something.
Yeah.
So like
and by the way,
cups.
this is not any information to figure out how much you consume
of caffeine. You know how
don't do this, guys.
You know how we were growing up, they had that, like, because YouTube first came out, or a video, and they had like all those online things where you try to hold your breath until you pass out, and that was like a trend.
I did that before.
And the Tide Pods too, people eating Tide Pods because whatever, and then like
I never tried that before.
Getting high off like those
Duster,
fumes,
yeah.
those fumes from like certain cans of I don't know what the hell they had to
Kids are
cheese or some shit.
experimenters, bro. They even did markers.
So hey, we're not telling you guys to y'all to do this.
Yeah.
This is dangerous stuff right here. So
before the show, we should probably have like a little advisory because I told people how to.
And even to begin with, consult
way.
your physician if you want to consume any kind of caffeine. Since we're gonna go the full length over here, and I'm saying.
Yeah. So just to talk about caffeine and its mechanism of action, it has several, but for one, it's an antagonism effect on adenosine receptors. So what that means is throughout the day, you have adenosine receptors and they start binding to the receptor site. And the more that get bind, you start to become more sleepy. It naturally tells you to go to sleep. The opposite happens when you drink caffeine. It replaces those receptor sites because it has the same binding capabilities. And what happens is it makes you not sleepy, makes you stimulated, ready to go. So that's like a brief, in a nutshell, of how it affects the adenosine receptors.
Yeah, because caffeine, people don't know, is that it affects a lot of things in your body. The adenosine one, that's the major one that caffeine is known for, the whole adenosine system. And there's a few other mechanisms of action that you could say occur with caffeine consumption. The other one is inhibition of phosphodiesterase, also the release of calcium from intracellular stores, and antagonism of benzodiazepine receptors. So all those like mechanism of action is why caffeine has this effect on us. And adenosine is the major one. And there's a lot of talks about adenosine. I know Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about adenosine a lot. Rhonda Patrick, I think, talked about it. And then David Sinclair also talked about it. That's like one of the main things that are responsible for you getting tired throughout the day and actually like ending your day. Because nighttime also affects adenosine, melatonin, and all that kind of stuff. But it's crazy how like one chemical can make you respond in this way and like in like the smallest ways. Because when you think about like the effects,
the way it makes
like,
you feel,
the way you feel, and you kind of have an idea like, okay, this makes me feel this way, but like learning about how it works, it's just like completely mind blowing. And you learn about these like crazy mechanisms of actions, like we just mentioned, and it's just like going deeper and deeper with a microscope, going down these rabbit holes, you could say, about science is like, it's when you look at it, we've grown so much in knowledge about the human body and how things work, on how infections spread, on people to stay healthy and how to be healthy. And it's just crazy that people don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, my theory on this is, since it's from plants, it's naturally found in smaller doses. Caffeine is healthy. It has its purpose. And we could definitely take it to the extreme because of how easily it's available. It's on the way to work. It's in the house. But one thing that's mind-blowing about caffeine, that it increases, from a metabolic standpoint, increases metabolism. But what happens to the brain, it actually reduces cerebral blood flow. There was a podcast I listened to that was saying how, and they can't associate this, but they're linking Alzheimer's and different brain issues to the consumption of caffeine through a longitudinal standpoint. So they can't link it directly, but if there's a cerebral decrease in blood flow, and what is that doing to the neurons and brain health that we have yet to discover? It's mind blowing on what this does. Like even learning about, imagine being like 1900s or whenever they found out about this, about realizing that, hey, in your body you have these vessels that are able to constrict and dilate. That's like mind breaking research at that time. And it's just crazy how our body is just such a complex organism made up of these really, really simple parts. Yeah, and the way this cerebral blood flow happens is the receptors of caffeine indirectly affect norepinephrine, dopamine, acetylcholine, serotonin, and that's why it's such a powerful drug, because you consume it, just like you're mentioning your Starbucks, it got you hooked. That gave you a reward that has dopamine because you got a free coffee. You also get dopamine and that rush from consuming the damn drink. So it's such a hot item to sell, because look at nurses. Shitty things are happening at work. Take a couple sips, you feel good. Break room, there's cookies. You consume a little bit, walk back in, consume something else, try something else. And then before you know it, you've ate like 750 calories of goodies. and it's the nighttime. Not to go off topic, but this is the part of it's so hard to be self-disciplined at work. If you work a night shift, you need caffeine to stay up because you're fighting your own body, and then caffeine makes you feel good, and it's just like this loop. And then mention the break room. How can you have self-discipline when all that's going on and you have such a bad environment of stress?
Yeah, and it's crazy because caffeine also draws up the concept of it's made in nature, so these things are naturally provided to us, but it's our job to not overuse it and use it for the right things. That goes with a lot of things in nature, and food to begin with is like the same idea. There's a lot of stuff out there that is neither good neither bad. It's just the way you use it as a tool.
Yeah.
Another way caffeine affects our body is through the inhibition of phosphodiesterase. Phosphodiesterase inhibition prevents the ability of breakdown of CAMP and cGMP, the levels inside, which cause levels inside of the cell to decrease in calcium. And this also causes vasodilation of smooth muscle. And this, when you brought up the constriction of the brain blood flow, it's crazy because caffeine is a vasoconstrictor, and like you could say it's like to your brain, but it's a vasodilator to your peripherals.
And your
so it has both effects. Yeah, and also it dilates your bronchioles and a few other vessels in your heart. And it's crazy to think about like how one thing can do both constriction and vasodilation at the same time.
And you mentioned the whole calcium thing, so it also has a bidirectional relationship with intracellular calcium. So caffeine pulls calcium out of the bones to the body and uses it. So there's a calcium loss associated with consuming caffeine, but what scientists are saying, if you just pour some milk in there, that should be enough of a replacement. So it's actually good to put milk in your coffee for that aspect. Maybe there's going to be studies in the future that's going to correlate osteoporosis with consumption of caffeine of 15, 20 years. We're just not there yet, but that's something to think about. But there's no direct correlation in the studies that we've looked at.
Yeah, my thought process on that is there's a lot of things that contribute to certain issues. Like you could say osteoporosis. There's certain things that could contribute to that, but don't necessarily make it worse or cause it. But it's like the accumulation of these things. Let's just say you have brittle bones, you could say, or starting to develop osteoporosis. And for example, you drink a lot of coffee, then you don't eat, let's just say, vegetables, which have a lot of calcium, and you don't exercise, which puts a little bit more stress on your bones, which makes them a little bit stronger. If you're neglecting all three of those, then you might still develop osteoporosis, because none of those three things directly leads to osteoporosis, but the fact that you're doing all three of those and you're messing with your calcium and you're not strengthening your bones, just a combination of not doing those three, you're going to potentially lead to bone loss and have osteoporosis and have a bone issue in the future, because nothing is ever black or white. Yes, it's nothing. It's like we're humans, so we're not robots. We're not like computer programs where you can put in and input in and then get the exact same output for each input. We're all different. So just because one person got one issue from X thing doesn't mean you're going to develop the same thing. And then we throw in the beauty of like epigenetics and our normal genetics and just like so unpredictable.
It goes back to lifestyle and habit, which we drill 75% of episodes, maybe 80.
Yeah,
it's our common theme here,
especially on Mondays.
Another effect of caffeine is it has a benzodiazepine receptor antagonist ability. So what it does is, as you know, adenosine is that I feel tired effect. Well, because caffeine replaces it, it has a weak correlation with having antagonistic properties with benzos that make them less effective and suppresses that effect.
Yeah, so I think of Xanax, for example. Xanax is a benzo. You take it, you feel drowsy, you feel tired, and you want to go to sleep. And when you compare caffeine to it, it's like the exact opposite. So that's why it's an antagonist for anti-antagonist.
When I was in Santa Monica working a contract, one of the doctors there gave Adderall to the patient, was prescribed in the morning to get him up and going and fighting. This was a C19 patient off ECMO, trached, and they were doing Adderall to get these people going and feel happy and energy. I wonder if caffeine can be used in medicine to help with that. Because if you're in the hospital 4 weeks in the ICU, usually you just had pneumonia, got intubated. Let's just say 30 days is a good thing that we see. And they feel exhausted. They feel hopeless. They feel like they're in the fishbowl for so long. Maybe caffeine could be a cool psychoactive drug to give to these patients to get them going, to get them off the vent. You never know.
So I thought the same thing for a little bit. Like, hey, why aren't we using like caffeine or something stronger like Adderall to maybe help these people's, you could say, mindset and mental attitude to get them to do things. But then while working in Chicago, I worked with basic heart failure, and I realized that, hey, any kind of small change in your vessel pressure for like dilation and constriction, and also the pressures in your heart, it takes only a slight change to really have somebody decompensate.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay,
medicine.
yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's why. Now I understand why it would be a good idea to do this kind of stuff, because everyone has to realize that, yeah, you have these mental benefits of caffeine. Oh, you're wired, you go focus, you could do more. Maybe it gets rid of some of that ADHD that you have, or maybe it ramps it up, or whatever. Maybe caffeine has been a really good solution for you, but understand that it has one effect on the mind, but also has an effect on the body that you might necessarily not always feel. And if you consume a lot of caffeine over long periods of time, those physical effects tend to almost turn into your baseline. So you might be naturally hypertensive just because of the fact that you drink a lot of caffeine beverages. Because if you drink 200 milligrams of caffeine every day from the age of like 20 to the age of like 50, you're probably going to have pretty bad hypertension. You got to limit yourself on things, because it, like I said, it feels good and you get stuff done, and those adverse symptoms like increased heart rate and all that kind of stuff, increased blood pressure, increased irritability, those are good for short periods of time, but if you're always constantly in those, it takes a toll on your body.
Always being in fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system.
And then you become addicted to these things. Like I've noticed that when I come off a shift where I drank a lot of energy drinks, let's just say I'm doing a 4 in a row, my fourth one I drink like 3 energy drinks, consume like, I want to say 400 to 500 milligrams of caffeine, and then the next time I go into work, let's say I have a 2-day break and then I go to work, I feel like I need those caffeine drinks to stay awake.
It's
addictive. But I know that I'll be fine without them, because I really don't need them. Because at the end of my shift in Austin, I kind of always do this, like towards the end of my shift, I'm not doing nights anymore, is towards the end of my contracts, I stop drinking energy drinks at night, just so I could, because then I know I'm going to have a few weeks, maybe a month or 2 months off. I slowly decrease my energy consumption over night shift, just to help adjust to a regular day shift schedule. So I just won't drink anything. And I feel basically the same day. Maybe it takes like 2 or 3 shifts to get rid of that fog, you could say, that you had associated with energy drinks and caffeine. But after those 2 or 3 nights, like, I don't even need it. I function the same way. It just helps me a little bit. I'm
brainstorming some ideas. Imagine the reason why we are sometimes irritable during a shift is not because of that patient. The patient could have created a cascade where you feel irritable, but it's really a little bit of that caffeine withdrawal that you just need to go get your little fresh cup.
It might be
from the break room. Just some random thoughts. I'm investigating more into caffeine.
Yeah, and plus throw in a lack of sleep and the change in your body's circadian rhythm when you are on night shift. Like any disruptions to your regular system is going to make you irritable, because just the fact that you work nights and the fact that you probably don't get enough sleep in between shifts or at all in your life, just by eliminating energy from like your standard night shift routine is going to throw everything a little bit off balance, and you're going to get that little bit of that fog and your body trying to figure out, hey, where is this normal thing that I usually get? And then it says, oh, it's not coming. We're not having it anymore. Okay, so your body's going to learn how to function without it, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, caffeine's just a cool tool, because in healthcare, we're just put in a shitty situation. The odds are so against us to be successful. C19 is nothing new. It didn't cause all this to happen. This is something that's been boiling over. That's even veteran nurses have told me. Like, this is nothing new. Now it got kind of exposed that we're facing tough circumstances.
It just brought the stuff from underneath up to more of the surface so you can see it. So the stuff was always there. This just makes it a little bit more visual and actually relevant.
And this is why we need positive change. We should think about, if we're going to Washington, We just got to find out if we're off that schedule because
Yeah,
we already got used up our whole week to go to Miami. Side note.
Yeah, it's all good.
We are the resistance.
We'll figure it out, yeah. So now we talk a little bit about the mechanism of actions of caffeine. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the effects of caffeine, what these mechanisms of actions actually cause the bodies to do. So first obvious one is increased alertness. And the thing with these is that caffeine revs up your sympathetic nervous system, which is like your fight and flight response. And then you have your PNS system, which is more of like your rest and digest. So the PNS gets slowed down and the SNS gets actually worked on. So that's where you get the increase in alertness from. That's probably the main reason why anybody drinks caffeine, is to be a little bit more alert, be a little bit more awake, more active, more focused. And that's the major appealer for caffeine. And they got me for sure. That's why I drink caffeine. I don't only drink caffeine for the taste. Like I'm drinking plain coffee right now. And for the plain coffee, it's a taste that takes somebody to get used to. It's an acquired taste, you could say, because not a lot of people could drink plain black coffee. But that's like the only way to really get natural caffeine, if you think about it, without adding any other thing. That's like your most natural form of coffee, I guess, and caffeine. But yeah, that's for sure. And that's ingrained in us because as a society, especially in Western culture, everything is like go, get it done. And if you could just squeeze in maybe an hour more of productivity into your day, that already shows that, hey, you might be able to beat your competition. Because while your competition is on lunch break from 11 till noon, eating food, you're slamming a coffee, you're eating a sandwich, it's only taking you half an hour, and then you have other 30 minutes to get back into work. And that's how people...
It's real hustlers out there,
Yeah, but it's not realistic. It's not realistic. It's not how our bodies are meant to function. Yeah. We're not a machine that's supposed to do the same thing over and over and over again. We're built to use our mind, our creativity, and just because you're putting in 30 hours more of physical work doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed in life. It might not even help you out at the gym either. Because you know how you always say things are just the way they are. They're just there. With one of the pillars in Frontline Warriors is just be. Things are just being. They're just being there. It's the way you use them. You can overdo it at the gym and never get any gains. You can underdo it in the gym and never gain any gains. You can overdo it with food, and you're gonna be unhealthy. You can underdo it with food. You're gonna be unhealthy. You gotta find that happy medium, and whatever happens to work for you best in your lifestyle.
Yeah, just like one of the first effects of caffeine is the increase in alertness. You can keep fighting your fatigue, but your body is signaling to you what it needs. It's tired, and you increase your caffeine, you're just masking the symptoms. Sometimes you're on that hustle grind. There's different waves. Maybe in the week it's Friday night, you don't want to go out, you didn't consume caffeine all day, you feel tired. Lay low. Just go take a nap, watch a movie, sleep in, get like those 9 hours. Don't set an alarm clock. That's totally okay to do. Because just like you mentioned, go, Starbucks or America runs on Dunkin'. We have that mentality engraved that we need to be doing something, where if we're just chilling, sometimes we feel guilty. I get that sometimes because there's just so much to do. We have a never-ending task list. I could sit around do nothing, but I could also get something done that's going to benefit me. But we could do that forever. My laptop could be up at 1 a.m. You got to set that boundary. Same thing with here. Listen to your body and lay low. Maybe you need a break.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the alarm clock because, okay, I had this theory that I was working on. So if you really want to figure out, let's just say you want to wake up at, we'll just put my example for example. Let's just say you want to wake up at 5:30.
For example.
My example. We'll take my example as an example for today, or for now. So like we can actually relate it to real life. So not that other things you can't relate to real life. I just want this to be super deep.
This is yours, bro. It's okay. Share.
Okay. So listen. So
I'm listening. Loud and clear.
Good.
I'm not hearing. I'm listening.
Good.
You know what that means?
You're listening. Damn.
I'm listening.
Respect, because I'm gonna ask some questions, or I'm waiting for some follow-up questions after this. Just give me this about 30 minutes room to speak here.
Caffeine gave me all the alertness I need.
Perfect. Beautiful. So I had this theory that, hey, if I wanted to wake up at 5:45, 5:30 in the morning, the best way to do it is to not just set an alarm clock and go about it normally. I wanted to reprogram on when my body was ready to wake up. So first, I did a little bit of the alarm clock before I realized, hey, I should do it a different way. So I did an alarm clock method, and it was good. And then I was like, hey, let's really step this up a thing to make this a little bit harder. and to see if this actually works. So I didn't. I set an alarm clock for 8 a.m. because worst case scenario, if I overslept for 5:45 or 5:30, it's okay. I'll miss one class. I can still go to another class. So I was able to, by naturally waking up and going to sleep, able to make myself wake up at like the exact, not exact, but I want to say a few 5-10 minutes off from the time I want to wake up. So what I basically did was I went to sleep at like around midnight, and I set my alarm clock at 8, and then I woke up at around 8. So I was like, okay, maybe I need full 8 hours to sleep. Next day I went to bed a little bit earlier. It was like 11:30. Set my alarm clock at 8, and I still woke up at like 8 o'clock. I was like, okay, so do I need 9 hours of sleep? I was trying to figure out like what's going on. And then another day progressed, kept doing the same thing over and over again. Then I kept going lower and lower each time. And basically, to make this long story short, is I learned that if I went to bed before 11 o'clock, my body would naturally wake up without an alarm clock between like 5:30 and I want to say 5:55 a.m.
So that's the beauty of biohacking.
So it's like, so now I don't even, now if I know if I go to bed before 11, and so usually I fall asleep before 11 in that case, I could wake up easily, no problem, no issues attached at 5:30, 5:45, 5:55, and I'll make it to my class. But then I noticed that if I go to sleep after 11 o'clock, 11:15, 11:30, then I gotta sleep till like 6:30, at least 7 for some reason. So you're able to really accurately gauge on when your body likes to sleep. My body likes to go to sleep before 11 o'clock and likes to wake up before 6 a.m.
That's cool.
And even though that's like, you could say 6, it's what, from 11, you could say till 6, we could say that's 7 hours of sleep roughly, right? 7 hours, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of sleep. But the thing is, if I go to bed after 11, maybe at midnight, I need more sleep to feel that good. So instead of just sleeping 7, if I go to sleep at midnight, I gotta sleep at least to like 8, 9 o'clock. Because 7 hours for some reason does not do me justice.
That makes sense. I was listening to a podcast and they said that the sweet spot to get enough sleep is 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So the more time you spend in that zone of getting sleep, it's like multiplying the amount of sleep you're getting. That's pretty cool.
And it makes sense. And it's like sometimes even when I'm super tired, sometimes like you get so programmed into this, going to sleep at 11, waking up at 6 or whatever, that you have this crazy thing that happens, this phenomenon that on certain days you could go to bed at midnight and you could still wake up at the same time with less hours of sleep, but it's almost like your body replenishes its reserves.
Yeah.
When you get the perfect amount of sleep for a consistent amount of days in a row, where your body has these things on reserves. I'm not sure if this is a science, maybe you could look into it. I just thought about this right now, but maybe your body has like these sleep reserves where you might get less sleep the next night, an hour, but taps to the sleep reserves, and you could still wake up at the 6 o'clock marker feeling just as good. But then over time, that deteriorates because you have less and less sleep reserves.
And another thing is also timing your caffeine. So caffeine does have a half-life. It gets metabolized. And depending on how late you consume your coffee, energy drinks, your caffeine source, day shift or night shift, it could affect the sleep quality that you're getting. So you could be sleeping 8 hours, but you consumed such a high amount of caffeine at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. where if you consume 200 milligrams at 5 p.m., at 6, it's a half-life of 50, 25, 12.5. It's still lingering in your body and still having effect on properly having adenosine attract. I don't know what adenosine does as far as REM sleep. That's out of my scope of practice. But timing your caffeine is going to affect the sleep quality. So a rule of thumb that I've always noticed is like 6 to 8 hours, no coffee. So some people stop it at noontime if you're a day shift. And if you're a night shift person, consuming it at caffeine is something I've done too to prevent yourself from not getting quality sleep. Especially going back to back with night shift, you're already sleeping 6 to 7 hours. Might as well optimize the 6-7 hours that you're getting. Yeah,
because you have to understand that the half-life, you might not feel the effects of caffeine, but that caffeine is still in your body because it takes X amount of hours for it to dissolve halfway throughout your body. So you're still feeling the effects taper off. But let's just say, for example, what did you say the half-life was? 6 hours?
Yeah.
So if it's 6 hours, if it's 6 hours, then you drink it at, you could say noon. for what reason you're going to sleep. If you drink it before you go to bed, you gotta realize that while you're in bed, that's 6 more hours of caffeine being tapered off. So there's still 6 more hours of it wearing off before it actually is gone. And I mean, this isn't 6 hours standard, because caffeine normally half-life, it depends on your person and your size, how much caffeine you drink. I think it's anywhere between like 2 and 7 or 2 and 6 hours where a half-life is, right?
So I just looked it up just for accuracy. It's 5 hours, but of course everybody's range matters, and it's anywhere from 1.5 to 9.5 hours.
Yeah. In our show notes we have two between 2 and 7 hours. So it's like you're not sure. You're not sure. And like I feel like for me, from personal experience, is the half-life of caffeine when my liver processes it and breaks it down, I think it's probably definitely on the lower spectrum, because I could drink caffeine and then I could just swear 2 hours that I probably go straight to sleep. It doesn't mean that it's for sure 2 hour half-life. Maybe it's 3 or 4 and I'm losing that at the tail end. But sometimes you can almost figure yourself out of when you could also drink caffeine too, because you can still drink caffeine without having any negative effects on your sleep. Because for example, let's say you work nights and your estimated half-life of the caffeine that you drink is, let's just say 3 hours. So 3 hours until 3 hours, so a total of 6 for it to get out of your system. So you drink it at midnight. That means from midnight till 3, it's gonna be peaking, and then from 3 to 6, it's gonna be going back down. And then if you go to sleep at 8, you might be completely fine. Or even if you might go to sleep at 6, you still might be completely fine, for example. It just depends on how well you process it. But you can kind of gauge yourself that way. I feel like for me, from experience, mine's pretty low, the half-life, because like you see me drink caffeine sometimes like at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning at work, and then I come home, shower, and I pass out right away.
That's the beauty of working night shift, is you can slam a cup of coffee and go take a nap 15 minutes later. You just want to get sleep.
Right, but the thing is like now, while you're sleeping, is it affecting you? Because if my half-life of caffeine is 4 hours, but I'm consuming it, let's just say, for example, I drink it at 4 in the morning, and I'm going to bed at 8. Okay, and my half-life for my caffeine is 4 hours, so total of 8 hours for it to go through its full cycle. So if I'm drinking it at 4 in the morning, and then I get home at 8, but I just need it for those 2 hours, and I go to bed at 8, then from 8 till 4, 8, 9, 10, from 8 to 12, that's 4 more hours of caffeine in my body. So that's probably affecting my 4 hours of my sleep if you think about it.
Yeah, could be.
So am I losing that quality of sleep? Because imagine if you could drink it an hour earlier, and now the half-life is less, and just if the fact that you drank it an hour, just because you drank the energy drink an hour earlier, now you're benefiting better of sleep. Because even though those physical symptoms that you are feeling are gone, but your body is still processing the caffeine. Hopefully that's not confusing for everybody out there, but you know what I'm saying? Like you can gauge when's a good time for you to drink caffeine. Yeah. You could for sure do that. And the amount as well. I mean, amount's the easy part because it's listed on the bottle. Because if all you need is like, let's just say you're slamming a Red Bull, whatever it has on 140 or whatever in there, drink 70 first, drink half of it and see how you feel. Because sometimes let people go over the edge. Like they're either drowsy tired or they're super duper wired. Like you don't have to be on a spectrum of real tired and super duper wired. You could just be like just enough to get you up from your seat to get you to draw labs and focus on your patient.
I'm kind of reflecting. It's always funny showing up to work before you had caffeine. That's another thing to time, not necessarily for sleep, but you're timing it so you don't get swass on your damn seat when you're sitting down and getting a report.
That's the biggest issue, bro.
So yeah, if I have a cup of coffee and I'm walking into work, I'm sitting down.
I'm standing up, bro.
Sometimes the caffeine.
I'm standing up. For a report, you always see me stand up because I'm trying to sit. Because I sweat a lot to begin with, and then plus, there's a little bit of stress associated with every shift, you could say. So that naturally warms me up, and then we're naturally comfortable in a car, which is a little bit on the warmer end. So I'm like double warm, and then you're throwing a hot coffee while we're driving. That's like another heat, and now you're getting a report, so there's a little bit of a little bit of anxiety associated with that. Will naturally raises your blood temperature as well. So I'm sweating. I sitting down.
Another thing is a side effect is urination. So as a nurse, if you're consuming caffeine, you're more likely to go pee oftentimes. Sometimes I like to hold the nurse over like before a report, before I start my shift. Let me go empty out my bladder just so my shift goes smooth. Because if shit hits the fan and sometimes you're busy for 3 hours, you gotta hold it in, especially if I'm consuming some caffeine. And then another thing I'm thinking about is the shits. What are you thinking about? The side effects of getting the shits of caffeine.
Yeah, bro.
So you gotta be careful if it's catching you before a report, or maybe you gotta go before a report. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Because it stimulates things.
You gotta be careful.
Things. Not just your mind, stimulates your body.
So
mind, and soul.
I don't think I'm that sensitive to caffeine, but when it comes to bowel regimen, I think I haven't figured out.
But I think it just depends. It depends on the foods that I eat before I consume the caffeine. Because if I have like fish, or something that has a lot of, I think maybe a lot of fat and dairy in it, and then I have coffee or after that, then that makes me go. But if I have like beef, I think, or chicken, then I'm chilling. It just depends on what I consume, I guess. Revs it up. But what's crazy is that when we're doing this research, is that I was looking at an article, and they said that caffeine has a potential to decrease the risk of suicide. Speak to your doctor before you try to handle your depression with caffeine or other psychoactive substances. But I don't know. I didn't dive too deep into this study. I just wanted to tell you all that's out there. But then what I'm thinking about it is like, yeah, I want to expect it might help you with suicide ideation, or maybe even like depression that's possibly leads to suicide.
Increases serotonin and dopamine.
It does, yeah. But then think about it. When you drink that caffeine and you get on that little caffeine high that you're having, and then once it wears off, now your bottom is even lower now.
Yeah. So I'm gonna argue that one too. Which is interesting is, you know how you have suicidal patients and they say if they have increased energy, that gives them the greater ability to complete the plan that they have. So what if you giving them the energy to when they're already in that phase, it only increases the chance of doing it because they have more of the susceptibility to do it. So maybe it should be depending on if that patient literally has a plan to commit or is just saying it, then maybe caffeine is more effective in that standpoint.
Yeah. I wouldn't see my thing with like suicide and depression. Before we have anybody try anything for it, I feel like they have to actually talk to somebody about this.
That's why it's studies controlled. Yeah. So don't try with your loved ones.
Yeah. Don't do it. Because like that's what I feel like is a solution. I feel like a lot of solutions to drug addiction is just complete cessation. Of course, not like benzos, not barbiturates, things that could put you in a coma. But like certain drugs that are safe to just stop if you're addicted to them, I think you should stop right away. That gets you already one step closer to like sobriety, you could say. And
that even goes with caffeine.
Yeah.
See how you're consuming it. Are you consuming it habitually for the wrong reasons? Are you neglecting your body? Because that's the best form of self-love.
Yeah.
What's going on there? And that's why it just all comes back to habits, just like the osteoporosis. If you're not consuming dark leafy green vegetables or whole foods and you're consuming Dunkin' Donuts with your coffee, I don't know what that caffeine's doing once you're getting released from the bones, that calcium. So food for thought, everything in moderation.
Right. You should, before you hop on any kind of medication or psychoactives, you should be like with understanding about yourself first. Like try to fix it yourself first before you hop into a drug. Because once you like start taking these pharmaceuticals,
it's happened to these drugs, you know.
Yeah. When you're starting these pharmaceuticals, it's already changing your brain chemistry. I understand some people need their brain chemistry changed for certain reasons because some things aren't properly being recepted or inhibited.
Trauma, damage.
Yeah, or things like that. You know, on a I'm talking on a neurochemical level, not necessarily trauma damage, but like physiologically some kind of issue where maybe
like car accident. You get hit, serotonin is not properly functioning. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah. So that if there's some kind of issue with that just all you do is a little bit of this, then that works out. But I feel like a lot of people don't have those issues. I feel like majority of people that suffer depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health issues that you could say, and stress issues, is that they could just naturally help themselves by just talking to somebody and figuring out the proper ways to deal with these things. Yeah.
And what's cool about I'm kind of thinking about caffeine now just for myself. I enjoy doing the French press for anybody that's using that. And also when I came back to Chicago last year from California, I had the little, to make the, is it called Ristretto?
So
to make the Ristretto shots is you put water on the bottom and then there's like a espresso shot with coffee. And then there's a chamber up top. What happens is you put this on your gas chamber and the water starts evaporating. So it goes up through the coffee, and then as it goes up, it loses the heat, so it turns into liquid in the process. And that's that coffee that you get. That's why it's so powerful, because it has that evaporation process for it to be created.
It's almost like has even smaller coffee particles that are, you know how there's...
It evaporates, goes to the top, attaches to caffeine in who knows what kind of way, and then it
probably the same
goes
way
into the drip chamber.
Yeah, so that makes complete sense, because like when you do like the Keurig, hot water is up top and it flows to the coffee, and then you get the coffee, right? But you're doing like a reverse process where the steam, it's still water, because it's still H2O, right? Or is it HNO now?
Don't confuse me.
Because water is H2O as a liquid, but as a gas, is it still? Or is it just hydrogen and oxygen?
Yeah, that's why H2O is so powerful, because it's in 3 different forms.
But it still looks the same way? It does, right? Yeah, it makes sense, right?
I'm a nurse, dude. I look like a chemist here. Ask me the wrong effing questions, man.
It's just water, though. It has to, because water is solid, liquid, and gas. So they're all H2O then, technically. It just depends on temperature. Yeah. Almost had to revert to like
you grade school back in the day. Seat, dog.
And it's okay, because you didn't know either, man. We both didn't know that. It's took me a minute, but nah, it's H2O. Yeah, so it's still H2O. So that's why it's capturing that coffee in there, that caffeine in there, and then it comes back down as a liquid.
Yeah, so
because it hits the top of it and it cools off and it drips.
Yes.
But still H2O, so that's why it's still the same thing. The steam is still H2O and the water is still H2O.
Long story short, if you are interested in that kind of espresso shot,
machinery,
check it out in Starbucks and tell them you want your espresso shot roast strudel style.
Yeah, for sure. One other major thing that so in my nursing career, I have given caffeine to a few people. One person, it was caffeine mixed with Tylenol, I believe, and that was for headaches.
Yeah.
And I think that benefited the headaches because of the vasoconstriction of the heart and the brain flow too. But I never really dug in deep into like how does vasoconstriction actually benefit headaches. But for some reason, this is what I gave it for. And another time, that's the only time I gave in caffeine. Sorry, but I did give Adderall one time to my patient, and that was on the same reason, to get them going and feeling better. So I feel like that's like maybe one of those things where a nurse might experience once in a lifetime. They give their patient Adderall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have given a handful of patients though.
I did Adderall and MedSurge because some people are just prescribed that.
Okay. Oh, okay, for sure. Never mind. I never gave it in the floor. I gave ICU one time, but I did give.
Okay. Like I gave Oxy one time. For sure, dude. Good for you, man. You gave Oxy.
Thanks, bro.
Percocet.
No, not Oxy. Adderall.
I'm giving you a hard time.
Oh, okay, for sure.
You said Oxy.
Oh, I'm at Adderall. I'm sorry. I give Oxy a handful of times.
I'm giving you a hard
bunch of times, but what was I gonna say?
I don't think you're listening to our words. You're just hearing.
You lost my train of thought. But I did give a handful of times. I think it's called donabodrol or donabodrol or something like that, where it's stimulates your appetite, and it's that THC drug.
Yes.
That I gave a few times. Never tried it myself, but I did give it a few times to patients. Never worked. It seemed like it never got the job done. They were never hungry afterwards. But it is what it is.
Ladies and gents, hope you guys enjoyed this episode, jam-packed of caffeine, thoughts, perspectives, what it is, the molecule, talking about everything under the sun when it comes to caffeine. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you find value in this, please share this with loved ones. See you on the next one.
Yeah, but real quick before you guys go.
Oh, my peace sign is up in the air, bro.
We have some more stuff on our show notes with the effects of caffeine if you want to read into them. We usually don't really have time to go over them on the show. But peace out, guys.
Peace.